Hello, everybody. It's Wednesday, the 13th of May, and I've just got back from having conducted the funeral of Linda Allen. And obviously, it's a very difficult situation at the moment with the coronavirus. And many of you I know would have loved to have been at the funeral, weren't able to be there. So I just thought, as I've done with Edith, it'd be good just to record a little tribute to tell you what happened and to remember Linda so that members of our congregation can actually participate here. The funeral was at 10:15 this morning. Linda had died about a week ago. She'd been diagnosed with cancer a couple of months ago and had had quite a short battle with that cancer. She'd begun a course of chemotherapy, but wasn't strong enough to take her third session and had died rather quickly last Wednesday, quite unexpectedly. And the funeral again was held today at James Brown's at 10:15. And again, with the current regulations, there was only 7 people allowed in the service, but a number of friends and neighbours and family had gathered outside, and we had a speaker set up, which was nice, so that they could actually participate. Carol was very upset she couldn't be there, but she had actually prepared the tribute today, which was lovely. And we actually began the service by listening to a hymn, How Great Thou Art, which was lovely. And then just remembered Linda. And we remembered that she was originally from Belfast, but they'd moved up to Glengormley when she was quite young. And she started going to Glengormley High School, which had just opened at that time. And in her later years, had become a prefect there. She also met her best friend Sharon there, and they'd remained friends ever since that. She left school and then went on to work at the Rotary and then Harland and Wolff in the personnel department there. But her real love was children, and the career which was her true calling and love then materialised, which was childminding. She started at Greendale Private Nursery, but then set up her own business in her own home. And over 30 years, she looked after a great many children, starting from when they were just a few months old and going right through to the teenage years. And again, as the families grew, the siblings would come to her. Many people obviously had that real confidence in her. And again, it was busy work. The first child might come about 6:30 in the morning, and the last child would leave about 7 o'clock. But Linda didn't mind. It really enabled her to spend more time at home with her own children and also be there for her mother and father. And we also just recollected that she always used to ring Nell at 9 o'clock every evening just to check in with her. She met David when she'd been disco dancing at the Chimney Corner with 2 of her friends, Sharon and Gronya. And it really was love at first sight because they met and they were actually engaged just 9 days later, but didn't tell anybody about that engagement. And then they settled down in that home in Cherryvale Avenue. We recalled that Linda loved to laugh. But when she was telling a joke, she always took ages because she'd be laughing and crying with laughter as she told it, and which meant she could never really get to the punchline. Linda and David were blessed with 2 children, Mark and Charlotte. Both of them were there in the service. And she also had 2 grandchildren, Tiana and Dexter, and really took delight in both children and the grandchildren. She loved her holidays that she used to have. They used to go abroad quite regularly to the sun. And Zoe, who's Mark's fiance, remembers sitting down with her on the beach on the last holiday. And just Linda had said, where are we going to next year? And unfortunately, that never happened because of her illness. She wasn't an over sentimental person. She wasn't all lovey-dovey. But her family were never in doubt how much that she loved them and cared for them. And she was very much someone who demonstrated that in her actions. She was always putting her family, but also other people first before herself. So it was good to remember Linda, and we then went on just to read passage from John chapter 14, a passage that Charlotte herself had chosen, and just reflected on the fact that it's God who can give us that support in those times of trouble, but also those lovely promises about the reality of eternal life, that Jesus is gone to prepare a place for us. And that has come to us through Christ's death on the cross and his conquering of death and of sin as well. We then prayed and just remembered Linda in a few moments' silence and prayed for her family. And then we listened to a final hymn, Be Thou My Vision, before the final prayer of commendation. And after that, we reconvened again at Carnmoney Cemetery, one of the new graves right at the bottom of that cemetery, where we had the committal. And again, it was quite hard because there's a cordon there now, and only 2 people at a time are allowed by the grave there. So it was a bittersweet time. It was good that the family were all there in the service. It was good that a number of people could gather outside with the doors open to hear the funeral service. And again, a lot of people were there at the cemetery at the end just to say their goodbyes to Linda there. But again, it's going to be a hard time for the family in days ahead. And I just ask you, if you can hold in your prayers the family, please just pray for Linda's husband, David. Remember Mark and his fiancée, Zoe, and Charlotte and her husband, Jonathan, the 2 children. Please pray for her brother, Don. And please, again, pray for Nell, who's going to find it very hard in the days ahead. And it was good, a real privilege just to commit her to God and just trust in those promises that she is now at peace and with God. But please do remember her in your prayers, and please continue to remember the family in the days ahead. God bless.